Hello, and welcome to the 10th episode of Bare Bones for the Practical PM series. In this series, we pick up topics that are important to product managers, cut through the fluff, and get to the essence of it. Before we get on with the topic of this episode, I would like to remind you that my book, So You Want to Be a Product Manager, is coming out soon. So please look out for the announcement. Today, we are picking up a topic that may not sound as fancy as some of the other topics we have picked up in this series, but which is central to a product manager's struggles and success every single day. Prioritization. Prioritization is something product managers may end up doing day and night quite literally. Why? Because it doesn't matter how resource rich your company is, things take time to get done. And at any point in time, only so many things could be getting done. So you have to prioritize. How do you do it? The fundamental answer to that is not complex. If there is one thing that defines product management mindset, it is outcome orientation. So while prioritizing, you look at what will have maximum impact on the outcome you are chasing and you offset it by the effort it will take to do it. So you definitely don't want to do things that are high on effort and low on outcome. If there is something that will do wonders for the outcome with minimal effort, you definitely want to do it. And everything in between, you evaluate for outcome effort trade off. One thing you don't want to fall for is busy work, which are low effort but also low outcome initiatives. These can be picked up if there is some free time between other initiatives, but these should not be a reason to keep pushing back on better outcome initiatives, which may also need more efforts. Outcome versus effort idea is clear enough and extremely important, but not sufficient. Why? I have seen lots of futile prioritization discussions, sometimes resulting in outright fights and bad blood, because the participants have not realized one thing, that they are trying to prioritize between things that lead to two different outcomes. In one case, I was responsible for a resource constrained product team. I guess all product teams are resource constrained. Anyway, this team was being pulled into two different projects by different stakeholders. One involved a homepage redesign and the other involved optimizations on listings page. The optimization of listings page was an ongoing project for the team because it led to better conversion, which was the team's goal. Homepage also came under the team's purview because homepage was also a starting point for conversion journey. Now, a very powerful stakeholder was arguing for the homepage redesign and how it has to be the highest priority for the team. The kicker was this: the homepage redesign was important to the stakeholder because they were responsible for a different newly launched product which would get a prominent position on the homepage after redesign. Homepage happened to be with the team focused on conversion of the primary product, but the push for redesign was coming from a very different place for a very different outcome. When this is not recognized, one of the two things happen. Either one outcome becomes default and always takes priority and the others keep getting deprioritized. In this case, conversion team could just put up their hands and say that they are not touching the redesign because it doesn't improve conversion and their goal is to improve conversion. Or prioritization is done by the loudest voice in the room. The other powerful stakeholder could have run down the conversion team in this case. I'm not going to tell you what happened in this case, but either of those would not have been a great result. So, while prioritizing, it is important to separate out outcomes being chased if they are different. Hence, my product management mantra is not prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. It is bucketize, then prioritize. What is bucketization? It is basically separating out different outcomes for which you are trying to prioritize initiatives. If your list of possible initiatives is coming from first principles and structured problem solving, then outcome is obvious and clear and there would only be one outcome that you are chasing. But in practice, even with the best product organization designs, a product manager gets bombarded with requirements and requests that aren't neatly categorized. Not everything that falls into a product manager's lap has been arrived at after a structured problem solving by them or someone higher up for a well-defined product outcome. Practically, you or perhaps your predecessor or their predecessor released a feature to achieve certain outcome. That outcome may be long forgotten, but everything even remotely related to that feature will keep coming to you. It may or may not be important for the original outcome or the outcomes you are currently chasing. At other times, you may be responsible for things just because your team or pod has always been responsible for it, although the active outcome you are responsible for is something else. Sometimes, as in the case of my example with conversion team earlier, some part of the product that is technically relevant to your outcome may actually become more relevant for another team, but the product org and responsibilities don't get updated. At another time, something you release to help sales team achieve an outcome can create a problem for the support team who will also come to you. Then a lot of things are plain hygiene that somebody needs to take care of, and some of them will come to you. At yet other times, you are genuinely responsible for two different outcomes with the features or products you own. For example, if you own something like personalization on your product, it may be in service of retention as well as acquisition and activation, or even for customer delight and NPS, each a different outcome and metric. So in practice, you don't always start with a neatly defined problem and then break that down to identify opportunities and then prioritize among them. In practice, that and a bunch of other things become a long list of to-dos which you are supposed to prioritize. And if you don't bucketize them, you will drown in them trying to figure out their relative importance. So, prioritization involves these three things. First, figuring out what the different buckets your to-do list falls in. Second, prioritizing between the buckets. Prioritization of buckets essentially means allocating certain amounts of resources to them. And then third, figuring out the prioritization of initiatives within each bucket that do have resources allocated to them. So to repeat, bucketize, then prioritize. And first prioritize between the buckets themselves by resource allocation, then prioritize the initiatives within individual buckets. With that clear, let us discuss some details. What could your list of buckets look like? One bucket could be metric movers. These would typically be new initiatives you are taking up to move the metric you are responsible for. If you have more than one independent metrics, then those should go in different buckets. For example, if you are responsible for revenue growth, then you may be looking at retention as well as new user activation as your metrics. Your retention bucket may have initiatives like gamification, personalization, introduction of new notification channels, etc. Your activation bucket could have things like experiments planned around trial periods, introduction of a new plan for a specific segment you have identified, revamp of the product tour, etc. Another bucket could be enhancements and bugs left over from recent releases. Yet another bucket could be hygiene, things that aren't coming in the way of your metrics but which are embarrassing to not be fixed or implemented. Say you have a widget on your e-commerce app that displays status of recent orders, but that widget is broken. Users are able to go to the account section of the app and see their order statuses correctly, and most of them have figured it out. It also isn't really affecting number of orders being placed. But having a broken widget there is embarrassing, and it is best to either remove it altogether or fix it. Another example is that let's say there is one functionality in your product that isn't do-it-yourself for customers. Say deletion of some outdated user data, and the users have to write to customer support to get it done. If your product otherwise is supposed to be do-it-yourself, then this is inconvenient. Customer support is not happy to be getting too many requests about it, but it isn't affecting the primary use of the product. It is a hygiene feature. Depending on the scope of your work, you can even have a bucket that is dedicated to specific teams. You can have a sales request bucket and a support request bucket, for example. You may even have an engineering tasks bucket to take care of refactoring, optimization, infrastructure work tech must do to keep the code base healthy. These are just examples of possible buckets. I'm not giving some universal framework for creating buckets. They depend on your context and should mostly require only some honest thinking and communication to figure out. So now you have created buckets. The next step is to prioritize buckets. Bucket prioritization essentially means resource allocation, as I've said earlier. This is important, and I must warn that it can become difficult very quickly. Bucketization and resource allocation to those often make us face the hard questions. Are we trying to do too much without having enough resources for them all? Or are buckets incoherently spread across different teams and product team needs to consider a reorg? If this is the first time bucketization exercise is being done, then you as well as your bosses may be in for the uncomfortable realization that these are indeed the cases. Also, if you as an individual product manager is driving the exercise, you may have to put in an effort to rope in your bosses and other affected stakeholders and come to a bucket prioritization plan that makes best sense for the organization and get all of them to sign off on it, or at least grudgingly acknowledge that this is what it is going to be. The politically correct phrase for that is disagree and commit. Okay. Assuming organizational and stakeholder management issues are taken care of, how much resource allocation is to be done to each bucket depends on what stage the company is in and what the priorities are for the product team. For example, if the company is in early stages testing hypothesis for MVPs, then even if they are embarrassing, it is likely that the hygiene bucket will be completely deprioritized. Similarly, if the company is in hyper-growth phase where all hands are on deck for supporting growth, then even if features made for sales or marketing is increasing work for support team, they may just have to handle it. Reducing support calls as an outcome may not be prioritized at that stage. At a company in a more mature and stable stage, many different kinds of buckets will be allocated resources depending on how critical they are. So exact prioritization among the buckets will depend on business and company context and also of course on how much resource there is to go around. Sometimes you may not want to deprioritize any of the buckets but will have to simply because resources are not there. But the most important point to take away from this discussion is that bucket prioritization and resource allocation must happen and be communicated to all stakeholders involved. Otherwise, as a product manager, your day-to-day life will be a prioritization nightmare with initiatives across the buckets competing for the same resources and every stakeholder breathing down your neck. Once you have the buckets and you know which ones are at all to be attended to, then you can get about the task of prioritizing initiatives within each of them. Outcome versus effort is the mantra here. The exact definition of outcome, however, will vary in different buckets and different businesses. If you have a metric driven bucket, then you of course want to estimate the impact of each initiative on that metric. If it is a bucket for sales or support team, then what they want the most is the biggest determinant of the definition of outcome. However, be cautious here. Don't blindly prioritize feature requests from these teams. Make sure you understand what problem they are trying to solve the most and prioritize the right solutions for them. People unfortunately often think in terms of features and not problems. That's the least understood part about good product management. It doesn't start with features, it starts with problem statements. Stakeholders make unconscious assumptions about the capability and constraints of the product and what will solve their problem. As a product manager, having a bucket belonging to a stakeholder or specific team does not mean that you are just the delivery manager of their feature requests. You are still the product manager and hence the problem solver. For example, sales team may want to remove certain steps in onboarding to make it simpler for new customers they have to onboard. But that step may be legally crucial. So you wouldn't just blindly do it because sales team asked you to do it, nor should you just say you won't do it for legal reasons. You should try to find out what the problem actually is. If it is leading to confusion, is there a way to make it less confusing? Is there an alternate solution that fulfills the legal requirement without causing the confusion? If this step is leading to drop-offs, can it be unintrusively combined with another step and so on? This is the problem solving that is your responsibility, and define the outcome by the biggest problems these teams are trying to solve. Some companies have open roadmaps where users vote on the features they want. If you have a bucket like that, then again, outcome is obviously defined by which features there have the most votes. In B2B products, you may have a customer request bucket where the outcome may be defined by requests coming from biggest or maximum number of customers. Here, if there are too many conflicts in the requests from different types of customers, for example, there is a big enterprise customer who wants certain things done versus there are lots of smaller companies on self-serve product who want something else done, then you may also have to see if you need to create different customer request buckets for different type of customer and hence define them as different and separate outcomes. So those are the different kinds of outcomes you may be working towards. Let's take a moment now to delve into the effort piece. Technical feasibility of the initiative and resource and time requirements from the engineering team is the most obvious effort involved, but that may not be enough. Depending on the context, the initiative may need help, support, buy-in, or even very active efforts from other internal teams, or may even involve external partners. So effort is not always just engineering effort. Effort is also not just the current effort needed to ship something out. You also have to consider the long-term efforts that will go in maintaining and supporting what you are building today. Long-term technical resources, efforts involved in maintaining partnerships, legal risks, sales, support and marketing bandwidth, etc. So when considering efforts, consider all of this. A very simple example could be adding one more payment method to your product. If some payment methods are already integrated and the payment module is well designed, perhaps adding another payment method will not be a huge engineering effort. But you may have to negotiate partnerships with new payment partners. There might be legal risks involved in supporting specific payment methods, and finance team may have to take the responsibility of many tedious compliances related to that payment method. And some of these efforts can be recurring and long term. All of these have to be considered while weighing efforts involved. Once you have considered the outcome and efforts involved, compare them for the initiatives within one bucket and prioritize the ones with the best outcome effort trade-off. Now you may have noticed that almost at every step, from creating buckets to defining outcomes, assessing impact of initiatives on the outcomes, and estimation of efforts involved, all of these require decision making, some of which can be data driven, others are subjective, even intuitive. There are some frameworks related to prioritization that can help with these tasks, but remember not to fall into the trap of expecting a formula. One of the most well-known prioritization frameworks is the RISE framework that was discussed in the previous episode on the frameworks also. RISE stands for Reach, Impact, Confidence and Effort. In the context of this episode, RISE can be applied while doing within bucket prioritization of initiatives. And you can think of the first three components, reach, impact, confidence, as a way of defining outcome. Reach means how big an audience do you have for the initiative in question. Impact means how much of an improved outcome the audience will see with the initiative. And confidence is a way to factor in how certain you are of your reach and impact assessments. If reach and impact assessment is straightforward or data driven, then you may have high confidence. If it is more qualitative, intuition driven, then you may have low confidence. You can assign scores to all three and multiply the three to have an outcome score. Similarly, you give a score to efforts and then take the ratio of outcome and effort scores. Those with highest scores can be prioritized first, with the caution of not falling for low outcome, low effort initiatives blindly. They may have a very favorable outcome to effort ratio, but with very low outcome may not be good to prioritize. Also, as mentioned earlier, be wary of relying too much on exact scores and formula. At the end of the day, those scores are subjective, and if an organization takes them too literally, people often end up estimating scores to suit their favorite projects. So instead of thinking of the score as some silver bullet for prioritization, use the framework more as a way of ensuring that you have considered everything. Further, to repeat another caution from the previous episode on frameworks, use the framework only when applicable. Reach, impact, and confidence may be a good way to think about the outcome if your intended outcome is a metric and your product is a large-scale consumer product. If it is a B2B product and the bucket under consideration is large customer requests, then even one big customer demanding it may be enough to prioritize it. Reach, impact, confidence, etc. become irrelevant calculations. Similarly, if your bucket is hygiene, reach, impact, and confidence might not be the right way to define outcome. You may really want to address the most embarrassing problem first, even if it isn't really affecting primary use of the product by any users. Another situation where you may not want to use RICE score blindly is when, even if some efforts with better RICE score is available, almost all of them are expected to have mediocre outcome. But there are initiatives whose reach or impact score is very high. That is, if they are successful, they will be widely successful. But they are moonshots and hence the confidence score is low. They may not work at all. Strategically, you or the company may want to bet on these moonshots more than the more predictable but mediocre outcome initiatives. So, you may want to consciously ignore confidence score in such cases. Take it out of the definition of outcome. So, stick with fundamentals of outcome versus effort and use RICE if and only if the outcome is best defined by reach, impact, and confidence. Another prioritization framework often mentioned is Moscow method, which requires you to label the initiatives as must have, should have, could have, and won't have. Now, honestly, this isn't something that really helps in prioritization, but it can be a good way to communicate the prioritization decisions. Rather than impersonal and semantics devoid scores, this classification may make more sense intuitively to the stakeholders when they hear that the feature you are prioritizing is in must-have category and the one you are leaving for later is in could-have category, rather than one had a score of 5.83 and the other a 5.02. Another prioritization framework that often pops up in product literature or internet is Kano model. It classifies features into three types: must-have or basic features, performance features, and delighters or excitement features. Must-have or basic features are those without which customers won't even consider your product. Performance features are those where the more you deliver, the more customer satisfaction you get. Delighters or excitement features are those that the customers may not be expecting, but if they get it, they will be delighted. These categories look like buckets to me, and if these buckets make sense for your product, then you can use them. The model also offers a questionnaire to help you determine what features fall in which category. However, the questionnaire may be suitable for certain kinds of audience and may not be suitable for others. If the user is an expert, they may clearly know what is needed versus what is good to have. But in many cases, especially if you're trying to take a new product to the market or it's a consumer product or the user is not really an expert, then outcome of the questionnaire should be validated with alternate means of discovery too, as far as possible. I will leave the analysis of any other prioritization frameworks you come across as an exercise for you. Try to think what exactly does the framework help you do and in what circumstances it will be useful versus in what circumstances it won't be. For now, I will conclude by repeating the key takeaways from this episode. That is, ruthless prioritization is a product manager's destiny. Second, always bucketize, then prioritize. More specifically, separate out initiatives into different buckets based on what outcome they are chasing. First, prioritize between buckets by allocating resources to them and involve other stakeholders here if needed. Then prioritize within each bucket that has resources allocated based on outcome and effort trade-off. Bucketize, then prioritize. And do not fall for the charms of low effort, low outcome initiatives. Then use prioritization frameworks when they make sense, but don't be a slave to them and do not apply them out of context. That's it for now. Thank you for watching. Do tune into the next episodes as well and keep an eye out for my upcoming book. So, you want to be a product manager?